They say that no matter what, history is always destined to repeat itself, that the mistakes and discrepancies of the past will always come back to haunt us. This may hold true, as one's skeletons may always remain in one's closet and will never truly go away. The demons that haunt us, the mistakes of the past that we've made, will always be there. What's in the past is in the past, and we can never change what's already done. This is a sad truth, and holds hostage a lot of people, good people and bad people. But there have been times that even though mistakes have been made, they do not define how the future will play out. In fact, quite the contrary, one's mistakes may sometimes change the future for the better. I've seen it myself. I've bared witness to it. Allow me to share with you a tale I managed to witness. This tale takes us back to the old days of the Wild West. Crime roamed free, and the law could barely hold its moral justice. Our main protagonist is a man named Braxton, but as you'll find out, this may not always have a happy ending. Stories may not always end up how we wish or how we would like for them to happen. But do not consider this a sad or a bad ending, but instead a bright future and a new beginning. Our story begins with Braxton waking up in the morning, doing his early morning rituals, washing his face and brushing his teeth, making sure he has a clean and shaven, welcoming face. He then proceeds down to the local saloon for a quick drink before work. He's already ready, pocket watch in his pocket, silver cufflinks. He looks like he would own the town as mayor if he really wanted to. The people of this town respected him. He was their only bank teller, but he was a nice and kind fellow, a gentleman, as you could put it. After a couple drinks, not enough to hinder his senses, he then proceeded down to his bank. After receiving the key to the bank and opening up shop, patrons came in wanting to withdraw and deposit their well-earned cash that they had earned from their own prospective jobs. Business as usual, although there was one fellow that entered. He didn't give off the vibe that there was something off about him. He didn't brandish a weapon that anyone could see. He didn't give the telltale signs that he was any form of a bandit or outlaw. He wasn't wearing a bandana, at least none to be seen. No rugged clothes. He looked to be a normal man like you or me. However, when he got close enough to Braxton where he could just whisper in his ear, he then brandished a revolver and pointed it straight at Braxton's face. Shocked, Braxton put his hands up immediately and backed away, with this bandit telling him, "Give me all the cash you have in the sack and make it quick. I don't want the law getting involved. Nobody here has to get hurt." Quickly, as he had been instructed, Braxton pulled a sack from under his desk and quickly began scooping handfuls of cash before tossing it at the man. The man took the sack and ran to the entrance of the bank, only to open it and find that the sheriff and the deputy had begun their rounds, making sure that everything was alright. Upon them seeing that he had a gun in the bank, they immediately drew their weapons, and the man shut the door. Seeing how there was no easy way out, he quickly ran to Braxton and grabbed him, holding him at gunpoint and kicking open the doors. "You shoot me, and he goes with it. Let's not make any stupid moves here." The sheriff and the deputy looked at each other. They didn't want any unnecessary casualties. If they could make a quick arrest or an easy gunfight without taking the life of their bank teller, they would gladly take that option. But this outlaw was not making it any easy. Without much thinking, Braxton yelled to both the sheriff and the deputy. "Shoot me! If it means that you can get to him, then shoot me if you have to." Conflicted at what the outlaw and what Braxton were saying, the two officers of the law looked at each other before coming to the sad decision of what must be done. There was no quick gunfight, and there was no easy arrest, so the only other option was to take the life of both Braxton and the outlaw. There was a loud bang that rang amongst the town before both Braxton and the outlaw dropped to the ground. Both were bleeding, and the deputy ran to Braxton to try to keep him stable. Braxton, at the very least, managed to take a look at the outlaw that held him hostage. His body was convulsing. He was coughing up blood, though. He seemed a lot more stable than he was. The outlaw tried to get up and ran before another shot rang out. Before long, the outlaw dropped to the ground, dead. The deputies tried to keep Braxton stable for as long as he could, with Braxton coughing up blood. He grabbed onto the deputy's sleeve and looked at him. "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. It had to be done." The deputy felt as Braxton's grip began to weaken before his heart stopped and his body lay limp. The town was distraught. In one fell swoop, 2 men were found dead in the bank, with one of them being an innocent, average man. Braxton was not married, nor did he have any children. He was a regular, average Joe. A man just trying to live his life as he saw fit. However, this is not where our story ends. For Braxton had a little more going for him than what he could have ever imagined. When Braxton opened his eyes, there he stood at the pearly white gates. He was in heaven. He didn't know what to think, until there was a tap on the shoulder behind him. A lady there, she looked like an angel, stood ready to guide him past the pearly white gates to his eternal paradise. Though Braxton was unsure of whether this was all just a bad dream or if he was actually truly dead. Braxton wasn't much of a religious man, but he did praise God every once in a while, making sure that he didn't live much of a sinful life. He did want to pass over to the eternal paradise. The lady was there to guide him, and she had told him as such, but Braxton wasn't ready. He said there was so much he wanted to do, so much he needed to do. There were so many plans he had, so much that was left undone. The lady seemed conflicted. Anybody who were brought to the pearly white gates were always willing to pass through. No questions asked. If they were there, they wanted to go. But he didn't. He was more focused on what he wasn't able to do, what he wanted to do, what he wanted to change, how much he wanted to make the world better. So, she had to make a choice. Either force Braxton through the gates and shut them, preventing him from leaving, or another option. She looked at Braxton and asked him, is this really what he wanted? Was he really going to pass up this golden opportunity to be in eternal paradise for all eternity? Was this really the decision he wanted to make? And without question, Braxton answered yes. He would pass up this opportunity if he knew he could make a change. He remembered exactly how he did perish after all. A gunshot, because a man wanted to be selfish and take what wasn't his. If he could stop these people, if he could change their way of thinking, if he honestly could prevent more innocent people from meeting a grim fate, or at the very least, give justice where justice belonged, then he would gladly make that decision. And so, the lady made a very smart choice. See, this lady was no angel. She was only under a mere guise. Within the blink of an eye, Braxton watched as she changed her shape and her form. Her halo was gone, her wings disappeared, and there instead stood a lady in a black robe, holding what looked to be a crimson scythe. Braxton had just encountered what most folklore would determine as a Grim Reaper. He was shocked, startled, scared. He honestly didn't know what to feel. In 1 second, she was an angel, a guide sent from God to bring him to his eternal rest. And in that second, she now looked like the guide of all that is death and decay. The lady smiled at Braxton and held out her hand to him, which he graciously took. The lady then guided him down a staircase of clouds, not to hell, but to somewhere else. There was a door waiting for them, and when she opened it, what Braxton saw blew his mind. There he saw a castle, a very large castle, in the middle of what would be considered a desolate wasteland, where fallen knights had once held their battles and had once shed blood. Around them were swords stabbed into the ground, flags and banners raised crookedly. Once they approached the castle gates, they opened very slowly with a loud creak. And then they entered. Looking around, there seemed to be a civilization here. Children in black robes, men and women, elderly in black robes, all going about their business, living every day like he had once did. Nothing seemed too out of the ordinary. They didn't seem to all be wielding weapons, besides the lady who had which guided him here. Everyone seemed happy, like they were content with where they were. Like they had hope that would never falter. The lady guided Braxton down a middle pathway past a marketplace, and inside of the castle stood a throne room. And when they entered, what Braxton saw made his jaw drop. There, in a large, ornate throne, sat a very large robed skeleton, its grin staring into his soul, and its bony fingers almost as long as Braxton's body. The skeleton began to stand. Braxton could hear the bones rattle as this large figure towered over him.
"What is this man doing here?"
came the skeleton. The lady looked between the skeleton and at Braxton, and she told him exactly what was going on, how Braxton refused to pass over, how he was given the chance to change his decision, but his mind was made up. The skeleton looked at the lady, then to Braxton, then back to the lady, before then sitting back down and holding out his hand, motioning for Braxton to come closer.
"Come forth."
Braxton made his way over very slowly, keeping a look around, making sure his head was on a swivel, lest he want to be ambushed by something new. When he got close enough, the skeleton looked dead at him. He could see red eyes peering at him, almost like they were trying to tear apart his very being. The skeleton held down its hand, and Braxton took it. Within a matter of seconds, Braxton was now dressed in a large black robe, and the skeleton rested its hand back on the throne.
If this is really the choice you want to make, then I cannot sway you. You shall be known as a Grim Reaper, the guides of death. You will swear your eternal allegiance to me and me alone. You understand this, correct?
Braxton was at a loss for words. In a second, he was now a Grim Reaper, a guide of death. He looked at the lady, then back to the skeleton. Well, who are you? And how exactly am I supposed to do this? The skeleton leaned back and looked up at the ceiling. From what Braxton could piece together of the stained glass display, the Grim Reapers were known to be as old as time itself. Heaven, hell, they belonged to no one. The Grim Reapers were only to serve as mere guides, sending souls to their resting place. If a soul was corrupt and lived a life of sin, the Reapers guided them to hell, where they belonged. And if a soul were pure and led a life of prosperity, then they were to be guided to the gates of heaven, where they would live out their eternity in paradise and sanctuary. Braxton didn't know what to do. He was honestly just taking it all in. The lady stepped forth and spoke to the giant skeleton. She called him Allfather, and that she would be the one to help Braxton with his new duties as a fellow Grim Reaper. The skeleton, now known as the Allfather, allowed this, and told her, make no mistake, if Braxton could not uphold his duties, then he be stripped of his Reaper abilities and be sent to heaven, no questions asked. The lady bowed respectfully, then turned to Braxton, telling him it's time to go. Braxton and the lady had walked back out into the main courtyard and past the marketplace, where there were new faces for Braxton to get to know. So many men, women, and children. Braxton could only feel sorry for them, knowing that it took for them to die to become a Grim Reaper. The elderly still roamed here as Grim Reapers. Even in their afterlife, they still had unfinished business and wished to make a difference. The children, the eyes of tomorrow, the future, were here. They must have met a grim and terrible fate much like he did if they decided to be brought here, knowing what this could possibly entail. The lady introduced herself to Braxton formally, telling him that her name was Angela. Braxton found it ironic that he met a girl named Angela who first showed him that she was an angel. But she gave him the synopsis of how the Grim Reapers work. They are neither to end a life or save a life, merely to guide souls. And should a soul wish to refuse or fight back, then Reapers are merely to reap these souls. It's very rare that a soul wishes to fight. However, the chance is still there, and Braxton now had to get used to using his scythe as a weapon. The first thing Braxton did, however, when given free rein, was to head back to where his body was. There wasn't much time that had passed since his departure, and there he saw his body next to the bandits, and he saw the bandits standing right over his body. In a fit of rage, Braxton grabbed the bandit and tackled him to the ground.
You did this to me. You're the reason I'm dead. I should...
Braxton stopped. He had a new purpose. He was a Reaper now. He couldn't let his emotions get in the way. He stood and brought out his scythe. I should guide you to where you need to be. You may have taken my life, and I hold so much malice for you. I honestly would like to wish the worst, but I'm not. I have a new purpose, thanks to you. I honestly should be thanking you. It's not all the time that one can somehow find a new meaning in death. So, I both curse you and thank you wholeheartedly. However, I was given the chance to go to eternal salvation. You, on the other hand, shall face eternal damnation. In one fell swipe, he brought out his scythe and opened a portal to hell. In you go. And if you try to fight back,
It's not going to get pretty.
the bandit looked at Braxton, then to the portal. He cowered and pleaded for Braxton's mercy, but Braxton was unwavering. This was not my decision to make. This was the decision made by God and Lucifer. You made your choice, and they have made theirs. So I will tell you again, in you go, or this will get ugly. Defeated, and knowing that there was no way out, the bandit had walked into the portal, with it shutting behind him. Braxton nearly broke into tears. He didn't like the thought of potential violence, though he knew that with this new lease on afterlife, a new chance to make a difference, there were going to be many tough decisions to be made, and he was ready to make those decisions. But that's where our story will end for now. Thank you all for joining me. I hope to see you again sometime. Many tales to be told, many mistakes to be mentioned, and so many new beginnings to be brought forth. I hope you've learned something today. Just because one may face a gruesome fate or a bitter end does not always mean that is the end for them. No, quite the contrary. Sometimes the end of a saga may sometimes be the bright beginning to a new, more prosperous one. I'll see you all again sometime. Until then, I am your chronicler, and thank you for joining me.